the divine connection.
Welcome to the Divine Connection Show. Divine connections are those associations or relationships that God has preordained for us. You are with your host, Katrina Deal-McCall, Clotia Mack, and Tenora Edwards. And now let's introduce our special guests, Carrie Joseph and Vanessa Hawkins.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so let's first start with you, telling us a little bit about what you do. We'll go ahead and start with you, Carrie.
Okay, well, I work at the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center. My role is prevention, education, and inclusion. So I work in the community, trying to ensure that everyone has access to services. We want to make sure that people know that we're there. We want to educate. We want to raise awareness around the issue of abuse for children and adults. So my role is just to be out in that community, making sure that people are aware that there is help. We are here to help, and there are services, even if, they're not ready to leave the relationship. And I think that's an important piece. We can still make sure that they're safe. So just really trying to bring safety in the community.
Awesome. And Vanessa, can you
Hello.
explain what you do? Hi.
I am the first Impress specialist at Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center. I'm just your greeter at the front door, and anytime you want materials or to do an in-kind donation, you would either speak to myself or in-kind or Lynette. But if you want materials, you would call and speak with me. Any resource material.
And I gotta say, you much more than a greeter, ma'am.
That's the truth.
You much more than that. So for our viewers, I'm just gonna start how we all came connected, because it's definitely a divine connection. I'll first start with a little of my backstory, and then you can fill in, because I think it goes from me to Vanessa to Carrie. So there was a women's conference held in Twinsburg that I was all set to go. I knew I had to be there. It was in my spirit to go. I went into the office a little earlier that day, said, hey, I can do a few things. The conference is right next door. So I'm gonna go in there early and start to work. Well, the conference didn't start to 10 o'clock. So I said, oh, you know what? Instead of 9:15, I'm gonna work till right up to the last moment. Well, as I'm working, the internet goes down in the whole building. Now we have on-site ITs. My boss even came into the office, and she came over to my area, and she goes, is your internet down? I'm like, yeah, this is kind of weird. It's only maybe about 3 people in the building right now. And at this time, it was right at 9:15. So I didn't find out later that I needed to leave at 9:15. There was no way the internet was coming back up. So I said, well, hey, let me just go over to the conference early then. There's nothing I can do here. So shut everything down, went next door to the conference. Or when I got there, everything wasn't quite set up. So I just jumped in, and that's when I met Vanessa. We're putting the chair covers over, putting the chairs at the table. I noticed her, she noticed me. She came up to me. We first had a conversation about braids. And she goes, oh, I like your braids. I said, hey, I like yours too. And so we had this big old conversation about hair. So that started hair conversation, getting everything together. And then so it was still kind of early. We were one of the first that were there. And then she went to go have her seat. I sat it at back at first. And then she pulls out the chair and goes, Katrina, come up here with me. I'm like, okay, all right, I got a new friend. So that's what I did. I went to go sit with her, and the conversation started from there. So as the time went on, conference started, more people came in. Julia started, she opened up the conference with what everyone was doing at the time. So I had just started my domestic violence ministry, and she spoke of that first. And she spoke about that, and then Vanessa, she was listening. And then she goes, but before that, I'm going to stop right there. Prior to the conference, I started the ministry. It was about a month in, and I had asked the Lord, I said, Lord, okay, I need connections outside of the ministry. I need someone who's actually in a profession that can help those to transition out. I know there's more resources there. I need to be connected to an agency. So I called the center where you ladies are, not knowing. So I called, and then I got a voicemail message, left a message, and then it referred me to the website. So I went to the website to try to get information, nothing. And so that Friday before the conference, it was in my spirit. The Lord said, I need you to call again. I said, Lord, I'm having this conversation just like this. Lord, I called. No one's reaching out. No one's connecting replying to my email. Okay, you said call again. I'm gonna call again. So that Friday, I called, and there was a young lady to answer the phone. I said, hey, you know, I started this ministry. I'm gonna need information and flyers for ladies that are in a situation, and they're calling me directly for help. And I want to be able to connect with someone I can trust that to help them through their process. The young lady on the phone, she said, okay, this is who you're going to connect with. I'm going to send you to her voicemail. Just leave a message and someone get back in contact with you. So left it at that on Friday. Back to the conference. So me and Vanessa sitting there. Vanessa's listening like, domestic violence ministry. Tell me a little bit about that. So I'm talking to her. I explained to her that I called the center. I'm still waiting for someone to get back to me. I talked to a young lady on Friday. She said she connected me to someone, and I'm just waiting to get the information I need. Well, Vanessa goes. Vanessa goes, honey, you talked to me on Friday. I was like, oh my goodness, are you serious? She said, yeah, you spoke to me on Friday. And she said, okay, well, I transferred you to someone, but I'm going to connect you with someone else. So Vanessa, at that moment, we looked at each other, and we already knew this was a divine connection. This couldn't be no one but God. What were you thinking at that time?
Exactly that. Nothing but God, because I knew there were things I wanted to do, but I also was in the process of saying, okay, first I'm very critical of myself. So it was like, all right, where can I go? What can I do? So when I met you, it's like, this it right here. This is it. This is who I'm supposed to be with. I said, so I was saying, thank you, God. Just thank you. Because I was like, I'm getting ready to move now.
Yes. And then one thing that I did remember, you said, well, I'm going to connect you to someone else. So that week, I think it was the following week, there was an event you guys were having or was going to be a part of. And I remember, I don't know if it was you, Vanessa, or Carrie, someone sent me a text message and said, well, can you come here to meet such and such? Well, I think that was one of our first snowfalls, and it didn't go down that way. And so in return, I said, hey, I'm having an event. I would love for you ladies to be there. So that Saturday, who shows up? First one's at the door. You, Vanessa, and Carrie. So that was my first time meeting Carrie. So I thought God had something up his sleeve.
That's right.
So Carrie, what did you think at that meeting? Our first meeting. Mm-hmm.
At our first meeting, Vanessa, you got to know Vanessa. She comes to work and she tells me, you know what? I met somebody. Look, we going to this event. Look, she's got t-shirts. Look, we're going. I'm like, what? What are you dragging me into? So when we got there, I still was kind of like, okay, what is this? But after we got started, I was so moved. I was so filled. I said, oh, I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. Good job,
Amen.
Vanessa.
Amen.
But it felt so right. It felt so right. And, it was just, it felt like a divine connection because, in my work, I'm looking for natural helpers,
Yes.
the people that want to be out there and are appropriate to help. So it was just like a perfect connection.
Yes. Amen. Amen. So outside of that, we all had a little sit down, we're gonna say. And then it was my spirit just needed to share my testimony and how the ministry started. So as I was sharing, I glanced over at you and you were like, like the wheels were turning. The wheels were turning. And then I think I had paused for a moment. And what did you say when I had paused that moment, Carrie?
I said, you are sharing the story about my sister in Christ.
And you gave her name. And I said, you know what? That is my cousin. And my mom, Carolyn Deal, that's the one who passed. Lost her life to domestic violence. So not only were you connected to my cousin, you're also connected to my mom. So full circle how God had already preordained this. So you knew my mom before she passed, and the connection, how he just moved, is just absolutely amazing. And I just gotta say too, it's definitely the most perfect connection because our energy, our personalities, they
Yes. Yes.
They really do. And you know what? And then this was my biggest thing because, domestic violence, women are trusting you, and I'm honored for that trust. It's hard enough to reach out, but also to reach out and not be judged. So my prayer was, Lord, send me someone I can connect to, first of all, that I can trust, that I feel comfortable turning those women over to. And he did just that. Because you women are wonderful. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. I promise you.
You're pretty snazzy yourself.
Thank you for the kind words.
Yes.
Those are kind words.
So I want to ask because, we were in the season of sitting still. And, every home is not safe. There's still calls being made. There's still, things going on that shouldn't be going on. So in this season, can you take me through or share with the viewers, what could someone do or if they need to make the call for someone else or call in and get more information for themselves, even with the season, the pandemic and all of that. Can you explain a little bit about how they would go about reaching out?
So we have a 24-hour helpline. So if somebody wants to get more information, whether it's for themselves or for someone they're concerned about, we have trained staff that can answer questions, give support, give resources. If it's a critical situation, if the person needs to flee, that's also the entrance, into our shelter. So we have that 24-hour line that individuals can reach out to. I think, the one thing I would want to say though is, when we think about somebody who's in a situation, particularly a domestic situation, we can't force them to make, a move or do something. They may not be ready. So we have to go with them. And the biggest thing is just continue to support them. We may not understand why they're saying, I'm not ready to leave. I want to try to make this work. We might not understand it, but it's not for us to understand. We just have to be there to support that person in their journey. A lot of times what happens is, and especially in the season that we're in now, when we turn our backs, that person is already isolated. And then if they lose their support, the isolation is even greater and it leaves them with no options. So it's just really being there for that individual, even though we may not understand why, and then, trying to get the resources, offer some things, let them know that there is help out there, but not forcing them to make that move.
Okay. And then have you had incidents in this season where people they're still coming to the center or walking through those doors, Vanessa?
Yes, we, even though there is a shutdown, as Carrie was saying, DV, there isn't a shutdown. So you will still have people who want to come out and they want answers. And, you know, our doors are open. I'm at the front. So yes, you can come in and someone will assist you.
That's great. That's great. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I love the fact that it's not only helping them out of a situation, but you also have a program for prevention, which is key before it even gets there. What does that look like, Carrie?
Well, one of our prevention programs is we go into the schools and we start our prevention programming at pre-K. So there's one particular program we do pre-K to second grade, and it's teaching them what abuse looks like and what to do if something happens. So of course, because they're young, you know, it's done in a very sensitive way, but we let them know, you know, not everybody's a safe person. So if something makes you feel uncomfortable, you have to say no, go, and then tell an adult that you trust. So, you know, when we talk about feeling uncomfortable, we help them understand, what's it feel like inside? You know, your body, what's your body doing? Do you shake? Is your stomach, you know, you feel butterflies in your stomach? But letting them know that they'll feel, you know, if they feel something, it's okay. Just find an adult that you trust and go talk to them. Because, you know, our kids see so much that they don't understand.
Yes, yes, that's so true. Wow, that's so great. I mean, it's yeah, pre-K, that's so important. Um, I wanted to say as well, is there other well, as far as like agencies, other agencies that you connect with and information that you need, is there any like events that you hold? I know everything's right now is just, it's not a lot of gatherings. Is there any webinars or things like that that people can help better, you know, educate themselves about what you do or connect? Is there something like that?
Yes, we do webinars. We do various topics. We might do just a basic DV 101, just to really understand what DV is, or we can do it at a higher level. What are the characteristics of a perpetrator? You know, how do you advocate for a victim? So we have several different topics that we can cover. We also, you know, we're also a child abuse organization, so we can do child abuse awareness. You know, what does abuse look like? What do you do? What's a mandated, you know, reporter? So we have various webinars to help educate the community so they can respond more appropriately or know where the resources are if they're concerned about a situation of abuse.
What another key issue have come across, and I'm actually glad that I took the class on mental illness. Is there an different sections like that? I mean, is your people like trained in that field? Is there like other different groups to the whole DV organization to deal with, you know, those that, you know, that have other special needs and this, you know, particular situation that they're in?
We are a trauma-informed organization, so all of our services are trauma-informed. We recognize that, you know, someone who's been through an abusive situation, you know, no matter what the extent of that abuse might look like, because, you know, it's going to impact people differently, but we're going to meet people where they're at in their situation and help them from there. So everything we do is trauma informed, so individuals have choice. We don't force anybody to do anything. Our therapy services are very, very client driven. It's how the client wants to do it, at their speed, what they need to talk about. So we work with clients where they're at and make sure that they have the resources that they need.
I know too, just with just past history and things, and connecting to people who has actually been through situations of domestic violence, and where the perpetrator is going to the classes for help and things of that nature. Is there a department that you guys have? Because I know some things are mandated by the courts, especially when it's been violence against, you know, victims, that sort of thing, that this is a must have. So can you explain? I always wonder who actually sets that mandate, and for how long is the classes? Is that something that your organization does? You guys step in and say, hey, this and this and this is needed? Who decides what kind of help the perpetrator actually gets, and at what extent?
That usually that's a court order for the perpetrator, you know, the abuser to actually get, you know, whatever their sanction is. So like probation, they have what they call the DIET program, which is the, you know, domestic violence intervention education program. So it's a court mandate. We work with the victim as a, you know, our organization is victim centered. We work with the victim, but when I say victim, a victim can be male or female. So we run groups for male victims as well. So we try to educate them around, you know, what domestic violence looks like, because some folks are in a domestic violence situation and don't realize that, you know, it's an unhealthy relationship because that's all they know. So we try to educate around what a healthy relationship really looks like. We also offer parenting classes that are also focused. These were designed to help parents create a nonviolent environment for their children. So helping them understand how children can be impacted and how to, you know, discipline their children, because, you know, violence is violence. So,
Correct.
you know, there's a difference between discipline and violence. And so we help, you know, parents understand that difference. So we're really trying to help people create that healthy environment for their family. But, you know, going back, the abuser, the court, that's usually a court sanction.
Okay. Now, Vanessa, a question for you too, because you are the very face they see when they walk in, and you know it could be a traumatic situation. They're coming to get help. What is their steps that you take, or who they should see and where they should go? What does those steps look like?
Well, basically, if they're coming in for like trauma-informed care, they do have their own personal therapist. But if it is a walk-in, our helpline does come out and sit with them and give them the information that they need. Or if the helpline is not available, Carrie or her supervisor, whoever is available at that time, and they want to step in, they will do that.
Now, does your department also, I mean, do you reach out to law enforcement as well? If it's, is that something you cross over to? I know you're for the victim, but how does law enforcement play a part? Are you guys connected that way as well?
We have a really good relationship with law enforcement, particularly in the city of Cleveland. We are part of the domestic violence high-risk team. So one of our staff members does coordinate that project, and she has facilitated training throughout all 5 districts in the city of Cleveland on what they call the DALE, which is the danger assessment for law enforcement, which is the tool that they use when they go out on a domestic call. So we do work with them very closely. We're now kind of moving into the suburbs now to continue that education. There have been some suburban police departments that have been trained, but we really have a good, you know, we work on developing that relationship with the police. We have the justice system advocates who work in the courts. They also have good relationship with the police departments and work directly with the police when there's a domestic situation.
I want to ask a tough question, but we know it happens. And it happens all the time where victims, they go back to the abuser. I'm not knowing what the numbers are or the statistics right now, but what are the statistics of women? Let's first start with the women that don't report what's going on with them. Where are their numbers there, or women or men? Because we're not just going to even just put it on a woman thing, because it could be women or men. How many don't speak out versus the ones that do?
Well, that's really hard to say, but we do know statistically 1 in 4 women in their adult life find themselves in a unhealthy relationship, a domestic situation, but that's what we know is reported. So we know it's much higher. And you mentioned they go back. We know statistically, and this statistic is specifically for women, but we know statistically, it takes about 7 times for a victim to leave, a female victim to leave, before she leaves for good.
Wow. And it's amazing that they can narrow it down to 7. So what are the 7s? Have you, are those steps 7 times? Do they have a label? What does it look like? Is it like say for instance, number one, are they like in shock? And number 2, denial. I mean, is it like little stages of that 7 before they actually make up their mind to leave? How does that look?
There's not any real clear stages. It's just there's so many barriers to leaving a relationship. Unfortunately, you know, in many situations, you know, there's just so many different things. It could be the finances, you know, maybe everything's in the abuser's name. Maybe there's children involved. So if there's children, you know, for that victim, what's going to happen if I go seek help and people find out this is what my children have been living in? You know, there's that fear they're going to lose their children. For some, it's a faith-based, you know, decision. Yes. You know, I'm here to, you know, this is what we did. We took this oath. So, you know, there's a lot of different reasons. And, you know, just unfortunately in the climate that we're in right now, for a lot of victims, you know, at the end of the day, the victim loves their partner. They may not like what they do, but they do love them. They want the abuse to stop, but they don't want to see that abuser go to jail. Or what's going to happen if the police come? What's going to happen to my partner now? So there's fears for that victim. So a lot of times, you know, people think, well, they're being wishy-washy. They make this call, but then they let them come back. But there's just so many pieces to that, you know, and it's different for each victim.
That's correct. That's correct. Wow, that's a lot of great information. It's just unfortunate that, what would you say, because I mean, this is just years of this continuous cycle of abuse. And I know you ladies work in the field. Is there any kind of recipe for this type of thing to not happen? Do you think if we educate more of the youth, and then by the time they get, you know, our age, that for one, that they're not going to deal with that kind of situation, or they'll know better? What do you think? Why do you think this cycle continues?
I would say the you know, the lack of knowledge, the lack of education. Unfortunately, a lot of our young folks, they grow up in that environment and they don't even label it as domestic violence. That's what mom and dad does. No. That's what mom and her boyfriend does, you know, whoever the partners are. So that's what they know as a relationship. So it's, you know, really getting that education early on so they know what a healthy relationship looks like. We have found so many times when we do our domestic violence education class, victims don't really recognize that their relationship wasn't healthy. You know, when you start to take the layers, you know, it's that onion, and you start pulling those layers back, then they realize, oh, I was abused as a child. Oh, I did see this happen in my household. Oh, so it becomes the norm. So they don't realize that it's not okay.
And that's so important, what you just said, Carrie, peeling back the layers of the onion. As God has brought me to this ministry, and I know this is where my purpose is, you know, being connected to so many women who's been in that situation, or even my own life being sprinkled with it, you know, because you get a little bit of that carried on from the family. I remember, you know, being in a relationship that, you know, until I started really digging into this thing, that I have to even look back myself and say, hey, you know, even, although it wasn't physical, it was an emotional, you know, verbally abusive, you know, relationship. So all of that plays a part. And if Vanessa, you had spoke, you had gave your testimony, and one key thing that I remember you had said that you didn't think your situation was DV because you fought back.
Correct.
Yeah, explain a little bit about that, because I think a lot of women and people, they really realize, hey, even though you're fighting back, it's still violent.
Well, for me, I grew up watching my uncles jump on their wives and whatever. So I was in high school and I remember this girl saying, I wasn't battered because I fought back. So that kind of solidified in my mind that's a fight. I mean, you don't go out here and fight with someone and say, oh, I got battered. No, you say, I was in a fight. And for my generation, that's what we did. You know, we told people, I'll see you after school.
Right.
You know? So for me, I literally thought I was just fighting. And for me, my first husband's mother would always say God was using me to bring the man to him. And I didn't want to let God down. I didn't want God to think I wasn't up for the task, you know. So if God is using me, then he must know what I can do.
Right, right.
So I stayed, and even when sometimes I thought I wanted to leave, the first thing he would say to me is, and you call yourself a Christian. I'd be like, oh, wait a minute.
Wow.
Oh. And I would rethink leaving because, again, I can let man down, but I wasn't going to let God down. And if this is what God wanted me to do, then I was going to do it. The only problem was God never spoke. It was man that said God was you. God didn't say anything. He was very quiet. So I had to literally learn for myself. Again, I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like because that's not what I was raised around. I was raised around functional alcoholics. I was raised around people who fought. So I had to say, well, what does it look like? And I came to the decision I needed to be healthy. If I was healthy and I loved Vanessa, then I would know what it was if I saw it. I had to be in a relationship with God to say, I want a man that loves God. Well, you know, everybody say they love God. I mean, you can walk into a bar and some of them people can quote scripture and you like, are you drinking tequila quoting scripture? but they can do that. So you have to make, for me, I had to make the definition of what I wanted healthy to look like. And did I want somebody who just knew God? Did I want somebody who was in a relationship? And did I want somebody who was in an intimate relationship with God? See, all of those are different levels and they mean different things to different people.
Yes.
I am striving to be in an intimate relationship with the great I am, for I am his beloved daughter.
Yes, you are. Yes,
then
you are.
When I look at a man, it's like, okay, I see different now. I don't even look at him like I used to. It's like, oh yeah, you just know God. Okay, let me keep going. So even the way I look at men now is different as opposed to just being able to look at them and see with my flesh.
Right. That's key. That's key. And I think with experience and pain and things that you go through, and then the more education that you get, and I just feel too, in my single days, you had to be careful, you know, because everybody look, I'm going to say that just the enemy or devils or big or predators, they don't show up looking like that. It's not written on their forehead.
No.
But, yeah, it really not. And some things can start as just controlling or manipulation, and it just progresses to other things. And I just think single women should just educate themselves on what to look forward to. I mean, to look to see what is possibly out there. You know, you got the narcissistic behaviors. Gosh, that's enough too to just, make you run. You know, I did a little research on that and I'm like, oh gosh, that sounds like what you call it. You know, and I'm glad I said no to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know we laugh now, but it's just like, gosh, you know what? And then you think like, Lord, thank you for not letting that go any further, because this is him textbook all the way down the list, you know. So it's just like, wow. I want to ask too, because they always say, hurt people hurt people. So have you had any incidents where it's been a victim and then now they become the perpetrator? Has there ever been, well, since they so used to fighting their way through, so now it's been so much trauma, now that's how they react to situations? Is that possible?
I can say for me, yes, because there were times when I went to Arizona, my counselor called me a crisis junkie. And what that meant was, even if it was peace, I needed a crisis to get me started. So for me, I would sometimes, I could be the bully. I'm very capable of jumping on somebody that's not even bothering me, because it's like, I need you to do something. Okay, let me start. And I can go in. So I don't know what, the statistics are or how Carrie would answer, but I can tell you from my own personal being, back in the day, if there wasn't a crisis, I knew how to make one.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I guess I would say too, when you think about that abusive relationship, it goes in a cycle. So, everything starts out fine, but then the tension starts to build. Then some type of abusive, act occurs, but then you go back into that honeymoon phase. So eventually, everything's swell. Again, we go back to the tension, then the explosion, the violence or whatever it was, whether it's a verbal barrage or whatever. But what happens then is the victim starts to recognize that cycle. So at some point, then that honeymoon disappears. So it's just tension, then that explosion. And I've heard of victims saying that, I knew it was going to happen, so I just did something to get it over with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they knew it was building, the tension was there, so it was just easier to be done with it than having to wonder, when's it going to happen, when's it going to happen. So, but you will have women too, or, victims that, start to fight back. So it's, a method of protection, but they may be the one to be the aggressor. But again, it's about protecting themselves.
Wow. Yeah. It's just such a tough subject, but it's very much in the world we live in. And I'm just glad you guys are there. There is help available. I can't stress that enough, because a lot of people think they're all alone. No one's going to understand. I'm going to be judged. And one avenue when it, I'm going to say, from the religious point or standpoint to this, I wish that the church did do more, but we'll take what we have for now. If it's connecting that way, so be it. At least there's help, available. Now, also, you said you're there for the victim. So if the victim needed to say, hey, because it's usually court proceedings and things like that. Do you go to court with the victim? Do you have a group or the department that does that?
Yes, we have justice system advocates. So the justice system advocates, our justice system advocates work in all the suburban courts. So we represent all 42 municipalities in Cuyahoga County, suburban. Witness victim handles the city of Cleveland. But in the suburban courts, when a call of domestic violence goes in, we are notified of that call, and we, make sure that the advocate that represents that community is made aware. So they are there when the victim is required to come to court. So we don't reach out to the victim. The victim has to reach out to us, but we will provide, that support. So when they see the victim in court, they will let them know what their options are. They don't tell them what they need to do or how this should look. These are what your options are. And then they just support them from there.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. Now, someone making a call, the 24-hour hotline, is that line just for Ohio residents, or is it from all over? How is that routed to the right people?
We get calls from all over. So our staff, again, the helpline staff has been, very well trained. They have a plethora of resources. So if it's somebody calling from another county, another state, they're able to redirect them. We utilize the National Domestic Violence, hotline. There's the Ohio Domestic Violence Network. So there's, the tiers where we can help support by getting them to the right person. So if it's out of state, we're going to go national. If it's in the state, we're going to go Ohio Domestic Violence Network. If it's local, but maybe they're in Lake County, we've got the resources in Lake County, Summit County, Medina County. So we'll let them know, exactly who they need to call. So if somebody calls, no matter where they're calling from, we're going to make sure they have that resource for that next step.
Oh, that is awesome. So I know there's very few places that are opening, and well, like Vanessa said, you guys are always open. But is there any events that the public should know that's coming up? Anything, any way to connect? Just for, like you mentioned, the webinars. It's always good to just to get that information. Any other organizations out there that think that they need to be or have more information about what you guys do? Is there any events coming up soon, or?
We don't have any events coming up soon, but we're always available to any organization if they want more information about the work that we do, if they just want some education around domestic violence, child abuse. We can, do a webinar specifically for that organization. We do, schedule the webinars, but yes, that's one thing, for us to be able to raise awareness, we need to educate the community. So
Yes.
we will, go wherever we need to. Well, now we used to go on site, but now we will do a webinar for whomever, so that we can help make sure that they have the knowledge they need. Because we always say there's a difference between an advocate and a rescuer, and we want people to be able to advocate. So we want to give people that information. So, we're more than happy to work with them. We want to work with the faith-based community because we know that a victim will go to their spiritual leader faster than they will come to an established organization. So we just want to make sure that, all churches, all, synagogues, whomever have the resources that, so that, we can help support them.
Yes, excellent, excellent. I know October is National Domestic Violence Month, and I actually spoke briefly a little bit. Well, me and my pastor connected that way, and I do believe, we don't know the details of it all, but I know I mentioned to them that we would love to have you ladies be a part of whatever event and how that's going to look. I know we're still in the pandemic. We're just gonna see how this goes, but I think she definitely will. It needs to connect. The church has to be involved because, like you said, most will reach out to their spiritual leader, and there's no resources there. If you want to get them help as soon as they can and get them the right help, and so I think that's super important. I know we are just about out of time, but I always like to leave the viewers with a word of encouragement. I'm going to start with you, Miss Vanessa. What would you like to share? Mm-hmm.
I would like to just share for my own personal growth, because that's the only thing I can say that I really know about is my personal growth. That before you can give anyone anything, you must first have possession of it. And that includes love.
Amen. That's awesome. Yes. What about you, Miss Carrie?
I just have to say, no matter what you're going through, you have to look towards, your higher power for the strength. Many situations we cannot do alone, but there's always somebody there for us if we just look to that higher power. So just always, reach out. I know that, my higher power is not going to put more on me than I can bear. So I'm going to reach out. And I'm gonna, no matter how dark it looks, I'm gonna reach out and I'll find the light if I go to my higher power.
Amen. Amen. And I just want to end with because domestic violence, we're still going through it as a society, but I can't stress enough that help is available. And Carrie, if you can give them that text to check number again, and then also the 24-hour hotline. So anyone listening, they'll have that once again.
Absolutely. Our 24-hour helpline is 216-391-HELP. So the letters HELP are 4357. So that's 216-391-4357. And you can also text that. So you can use that same number and text. If it's not safe to talk, you can text.
Awesome. All right, ladies, I so appreciate you for coming on the show this evening. This has been so wonderful. And then as soon as it's okay, hold on, the Lord, I'm pretty sure he'll drop in our spirit where we need to get together. We'll wear our masks and get our lights on. We'll work it out. Okay.
Right.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for making the time to come on the show this evening. Okay, and then I'll be speaking with you soon. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Much
Katrina.
love.
Much
Thank
love
you.
to you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We edify, we uplift, we glorify. It's a divine connection.